Hello everybody, my name is Roger Stover and I am going to show you a fly that I developed over several seasons, and after catching literally hundreds of migrating shad, mostly on the Yuba River in California where I lived at the time, but also in other rivers of the Sacramento and American River watersheds, and then again on the Umpqua River here in Oregon where I live now. This is a fly that I fish almost exclusively now when I'm fly fishing for shad. It's a highly versatile fly, one that's easy to fish and has some characteristics that I'll explain to you as we go through this. First of all, let me show you the size, and I'll hold this little scale I made up behind it here. You can see that this is on a size 10 hook, and it's a little more than 3/4 of an inch long. I typically tie this on this size hook, but I've also done it on size 12 and size 8, but this is my favorite size. Before I get into the materials and the process for tying it, I want to describe a couple things about this fly that make it so successful for me. And with that in mind, I want to say that I think the structure of this fly is more important to understand than the specific colors of the materials that I'm using. First of all, this is a fly that is highly durable. You might be able to see the shininess of the body here. That's a reflection from the UV coating that I have on it there. That also makes it highly durable and helps it sink quickly. I use a curved hook, which I think gives it a little bit better action. And as you can tell, possibly you can tell, that is an inverting tungsten bead I have on here. Let me show you that when you're fishing this on the swing, it typically will ride hook up this way, so you get fewer snags on the bottom of the river, but more importantly, you're more likely to hook the shad in its upper jaw where there's a lot of cartilage, and you'll get a much better hookup when that happens. If you fish for shad before, you know that it is very easy to lose them because overall their mouths are very soft. So that's the basic structure of this fly, and so now what I'll do is just show you the different components that have gone into this particular fly, and then the process I use for tying it. So let me take it out of the vise and start with the materials here. The first one is the hook. I like the TMC 2302 in a size 10. You can see it's 2x long and it's slightly curved. The next element in this particular fly is the inverting bead. I use gold 4mm beads, pretty heavy. And these inverting beads are what make the fly ride hook up. I also use different colored beads, copper and even some brightly colored red ones for mixing it up a little bit in my shad fly box. So there's several companies that make these beads nowadays, and they're known by names such as drop beads, and I think I've even seen them referred to as teardrop beads because they're sort of shaped that way. The thread I will be using is, in this case, Ultra Thread 140 denier. This one's in fluorescent fire orange. But I'll tell you, my other two favorite colors are fluorescent pink and fluorescent chartreuse. To add a little bit more weight and to keep the bead in its place, I use 020 lead wire. I like this because it has a fairly low profile. It doesn't add a lot of size bulk, but it does add some nice weight to the fly, again helping it to sink quickly. For the tail, today I'll be using Antron yarn, but you can use other materials that you like for tails. I oftentimes will use something like Crystal Flash, and I'll show you while I'm at this right now. Fluorescent chartreuse fly, you can see that the collar and the bead are the same as the one I just showed you, but this one has different colored thread, and I'm using Crystal Flash for the tail. It's very effective. And again, I want to encourage you, experiment. Find this combination of colors that work well for you. I wrap the body once I've tied on the thread with gold wire. This one is a medium width. I think in other brands it might be called brassy or something like that. The UV finish I use on the body is a thin one. This one happens to be a Loon product. Any will work, but I like this one because it comes with a little brush and it just makes it easy to apply. Then we have the collar, which is Ice Dub in Pearl. I do like to use the bright colored and various versions of Ice Dub UV too in different colors. And then finally, the head cement that I like to use is this simple one here, Sally Hansen Hard as Nails. It tends to really last a long time. It's easy to use. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into tying the fly now. And I want to apologize right up front if some of the video gets shaky. I'm trying to record this with the camera facing it as you, the tyer, would see the fly rather than forcing you to see it from the other angle, from the other side. And here we go. I've put a hook in the vise that I've already mashed the barb on and mounted the inverting bead. The small hole goes toward the eye. There's a little bit of a recess on the side of the fly that goes toward the hook point. The next piece of material that I'll use here is this. I'm going to change the angle of my fly a little bit. Drop that down. There we go. I'm going to wrap just a few wraps of this 020 lead wire. I'm going to put it on the near side of the hook shank, anchor it in place with my thumb. I like to counter wrap because when I put the thread on, it goes over the wire rather than in between the wire wraps. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did those fairly tight, and you can see where I was holding it. It's sticking up. So while I'm still holding the spool of wire, it holds everything in place, and I can smooth down those loose elements. And it's very easy with your thumbnail to break that lead off. Now I'm going to flip that back over. I'm going to apply just a small bit of my head cement right here. And then I'm going to mash that lead wire right into the recess of my bead, and I'm going to hold it there for a few seconds just to let that set up. I have found that this Sally Hansen Hard as Nails dries pretty quickly, so it doesn't take long to get it to set. All right, that's good. Now I'm going to flip it back over to the position that we're most accustomed to tying our flies in, and the next things to do is just start applying our thread. Put that right behind the lead wraps, and I'm going to build up a small dam there just to hold everything in place. Spiral it toward the bead and then go back. If you hold this tag of thread up in the air like this, it helps stack your thread wraps and keep them close together. I'm going to get it back near the hook point. Go over one more time. I'm going to come forward with a little bit of a spiral again. It's just easier to work from this position. And now I'm going to take my Antron yarn and I'm going to clip off the ends of it just so there's no stragglers here. It makes it easier for me to trim later. And I'm going to lay that on the hook shank, just get it started, cover up those little parts sticking out right there, wind my thread back to where I stopped the thread in the first place, let go of my thread bobbin, reach in with a pair of scissors, cut the tail. This may not be necessary, but I like to wrap around and underneath that tail just to keep it in place while it's being fished. Bring that up, wrap forward again to the lead wraps, and the next piece of the puzzle here is the wire, which will be my ribbing. I'm just going to place that right here on the shank and wind back to the tail. And now I'm just going to build up my body by wrapping with the thread. I do like to have a little bit of a taper, so I'll put a thicker application of the thread near the bead and just go back and forth, covering all the stuff that's underneath. I can see a little bit of that lead wire sticking up there and a little bit of fuzziness from my tail still sticking out. That won't hurt anything in the finished product. These fish, I don't think they're quite that picky, but having something that's bright and moves quickly and drops and is a very good fly for jigging while swinging, which is the way I like to fish these, really works well. All right, I can see that that lead is sticking up there. I'm going to mash it down a little bit. Get back over it. That's good enough. All right, I'm going to come forward here, get a nice smooth body built up. And it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Okay, that's that. That's as much body as I need from the thread. I'm going to take my wire now and do an open spiral toward the bead. Wrap it around a couple times right behind the bead. Anchor it in place with my thread. Oh, there I bumped the camera. Sorry about that. Get a little bit extra. Reach in with some scissors that I have dedicated to cutting wire. Trim that off. And now I'm ready to apply my UV coating. If you try to do this after you put the collar on, it's going to be a sloppy mess. So this is something you want to do before you wrap your dubbing collar on. And I'm just going to put a very thin coating on here. I like to use UV cement, by the way. I have tried my Sally Hansen Hard as Nails for this. It does work, but it does take a little bit longer to dry, and I'm one of those guys that likes to get done with these things fairly quickly. So the UV, as you know, once you put your UV torch on it, and look at that light up. Just going to move this back and forth just to make sure the UV light cures that coating I put on there very quickly. That looks good. I'm going to touch it just to make sure it's not tacky. Nope, it's fine. And now I'm ready to put on my collar. So I got a little pinch of that pearl eye stub here. I'm going to pull a little piece of it off, wrap it onto the thread, a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more. There we go. Doesn't take a whole lot, but I do like enough that it shows up. Now I'm going to just wrap this right up against the bead. I'm going to take another couple of turns with the thread right behind the bead and in front of the collar. And now I'm going to take my Sally Hansen Hard as Nails, and I like to coat my thread rather than try to apply this on the fly itself. So I'll wrap that around a couple of times, put a whip finish on it. Doesn't take much. Probably don't even really need a whip finish with the way I apply the cement, but I do it anyway. Old habits are hard to break. And now trim that piece. And there you have it. Does the fly have a name? Well, it's my favorite, so if you want a name, you could call it Roger's Favorite Shad Fly.